I'll never forget the night when everything changed. The night when the person I trusted most, the one I gave my whole heart to, revealed a side of himself I never thought existed. It didn't happen with fireworks. It didn't come with a loud explosion. It came like a whisper, quiet enough to almost ignore, yet powerful enough to destroy me. They say betrayal doesn't come from your enemies. It comes from the people you let closest to you. And that night, I learned the truth of those words. I remember sitting in the living room, the clock ticking past midnight. The house felt different, too quiet, too still, the kind of silence that carries secrets in its shadow. Something was wrong. I could feel it. And I was right. Because that night, I discovered a betrayal so deep, it would change the course of my life. And what I did next? That's the part no one ever saw coming. The revenge I carried out would not only expose the lies, it would leave him speechless. Back then, I believed in happy endings. I believed in promises, and I believed in him. His name was Daniel. Charming, kind, or at least that's what I thought. He had that smile that could light up an entire room, and words that flowed so smoothly they felt like music. I was young, maybe too young to see the cracks in the walls he built around his heart. We met at a cafe, one of those places you stumble into on a rainy day when the world feels heavy. I was sitting along with a notebook, scribbling half-finished thoughts, when he asked if he could sit across from me. His confidence was effortless, his presence magnetic. Looking back now, maybe it wasn't fate that brought us together. Maybe it was a warning I failed to read. But at that time, it felt like the universe had dropped him into my world. The first few months were like living in a dream. He made me laugh. He listened. He remembered the little things, the way I took my coffee, the stories I told him about my childhood, the dreams I whispered late at night when I was too tired to filter them. It felt real. It felt safe. And most of all, it felt permanent. But love, as I later learned, can be the perfect disguise for betrayal. It started with little things, the way his phone would buzz late at night, and he'd flip it face down, the way his smile didn't always reach his eyes, the excuses, work meetings, last-minute trips, vague explanations that seemed harmless at first. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him, because admitting otherwise meant questioning everything we had built. And so I ignored the whispers inside my own head. I silenced my instincts. I convinced myself that trust meant patience, that love meant giving him the benefit of the doubt. But deep down, a storm was already brewing. The cracks were widening, and soon, everything would collapse. The turning point came on a Wednesday night. It always seems to be the ordinary days, the ones that don't announce themselves as life-changing, that end up carving scars into your memory. Daniel had told me he'd be working late again. By then, I had learned not to question it out loud. But inside, the unease was growing like vines wrapping around my ribs, tightening, making it harder to breathe. That night, I decided to make him a surprise dinner. I thought maybe, just maybe, we could reconnect. I spent hours preparing his favorite dish, setting the table, lighting candles like it was our first date. But hours passed, and he never showed. Midnight came. The food was cold. My phone was silent. And the silence, it was unbearable. The next morning, I found an unfamiliar perfume on his jacket. It wasn't mine. It wasn't anyone's I recognized. And suddenly, the world around me shifted. The smiles, the excuses, the late nights. Everything began to look different under the harsh light of suspicion. It was like watching a glass shatter in slow motion. The pieces of the life I thought I had were falling apart, and I couldn't stop it. I wanted answers. I wanted the truth. But part of me was terrified of what I might find. Because once you see the truth, you can never unsee it.
Still, I couldn't look away anymore, and so I decided to follow him. The day I uncovered his betrayal is etched into my memory like a scar. It was raining again. Funny how storms seem to follow the most important moments in my life. Daniel said he had a late meeting. I smiled, kissed his cheek, and told him to work hard. But as soon as he walked out the door, I grabbed my coat and followed at a distance. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that I would find him exactly where he said he'd be. But a part of me already knew better. He didn't drive toward the office. He drove across town. I trailed behind, careful not to get too close. Every red light felt like an eternity. Every turn he made pulled me further away from the person I thought I knew. Finally, he stopped in front of a small restaurant. Not a place for business meetings. Not at that hour. And then I saw her. A woman stepped out of the car parked nearby. Young, beautiful. She smiled as Daniel rushed to her side, placing his hand on the small of her back as if it was the most natural thing in the world. My world stopped. I watched as they walked into the restaurant together, laughing, leaning close, sharing secrets that were supposed to belong to me. It wasn't just a fling. It wasn't just one mistake. The way he looked at her, it was the way he used to look at me. That was the moment my heart shattered. Not because he was with someone else, but because he had taken the love I gave him, the trust I built around him, and handed it to someone else as if it meant nothing. I wanted to storm inside. I wanted to scream, to confront him, to tear apart the fragile illusion he was living in. But something inside me told me to wait. Because betrayal deserves more than anger. It deserves justice. And from that night on, my revenge began to take shape. After that night, I couldn't sleep. The image of Daniel with her replayed in my mind like a film I couldn't turn off. Every laugh they shared, every look in his eyes that used to belong to me, it all burned into my memory. But grief slowly hardened into something else. Something sharper, something colder. I wasn't going to cry myself into exhaustion anymore. I wasn't going to beg for an explanation. I wasn't going to be the fool who let betrayal walk all over her. No, if he wanted to play games in the shadows, then I would show him how it feels when the lights turn on. I began observing, watching, collecting. Every lie he told me, I wrote down. Every excuse, I traced. I noticed his patterns, the nights he disappeared, the mornings he came home late, the lies wrapped in work obligations. And while he thought I was naive, I was building a case. Screenshots, receipts, messages he thought I'd never see. The truth wasn't just hidden, it was begging to be revealed. And I wasn't going to expose it in anger. I was going to expose it with precision. Because real revenge isn't loud. It's silent, meticulous, and devastating. The more evidence I gathered, the more powerful I felt. It was as if the broken pieces of me were rebuilding into armor. I wasn't the same woman he thought he could deceive. And then, one day, an opportunity fell into my lap. Daniel had been planning a big dinner. He wanted me there. He said it was important. Part of me knew it wasn't about me. It was about appearances. He wanted to maintain the illusion that everything was fine, that his double life was unbreakable. That was when I realized this dinner would be the stage. Not for his lies, but for my truth. So I prepared, not just a dress or a smile, but a performance of my own. The evidence carefully organized, his words ready to be turned back on him. And in the days leading up to that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Control. The night of the dinner arrived. The room was glowing with laughter, clinking glasses, the soft hum of background music. Daniel looked so confident, so certain that his mask was still intact. He introduced me to colleagues, to friends, shaking hands, smiling like the perfect partner. To anyone else, he looked like a man who had it all: a thriving career, a loving relationship, a flawless image. But what no one knew was that his empire of lies was about to crumble. We sat down at the long polished table, and for the first time in a long while, I smiled at him. Not because I loved him, but because I knew something he didn't. When the waiter poured the wine and the conversation flowed, I waited for the right moment. And then, calmly, I pulled out my phone. I didn't say a word. I simply pressed play. The table went quiet. The sound of his voice filled the room, his laughter, his whispered promises, the same ones he once made to me, now spoken to someone else. Every guest froze. His colleagues stared. His friends looked at each other in shock. And Daniel? His face drained of color. His mouth opened, but no words came out. For once, he was the one left speechless. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply looked at him, held his gaze, and let the silence crush him harder than any words ever could. Because silence is powerful. Silence leaves room for the truth to echo louder. He tried to stammer an excuse, tried to twist the story, but the evidence spoke for itself. The lies were no longer hidden in shadows. They were on full display, illuminated under the eyes of everyone he wanted to impress. And in that moment, I realized something important. Revenge isn't about destruction. It's about revelation. That was the night Daniel's world cracked open. And though I walked out of that room without raising my voice, I knew I had left behind a storm he could never recover from. I didn't just expose his betrayal. I exposed the truth he tried so desperately to bury. And truth, once revealed, isn't possible to silence. After that night, everything shifted. The fallout was immediate. His colleagues distanced themselves. His reputation, once polished and untouchable, now carried cracks too wide to ignore. The whispers followed him everywhere, not because I wanted to humiliate him, but because lies once revealed have a way of haunting their owners. Daniel tried to reach out. He called, he texted, he even showed up at my door with roses in hand, eyes heavy with regret. He begged, pleaded, promised change. But I had already heard those words before, and I knew better now. For years, I had let his words define my reality. But standing in front of him, I realized something powerful. His words no longer held weight. They no longer had the ability to shake me because I had reclaimed my voice. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to argue. I simply told him, the person I loved doesn't exist anymore, and the person you are now doesn't deserve me. And with that, I closed the door. It wasn't easy. The weeks that followed were heavy. My home felt quieter than ever, and sometimes loneliness echoed louder than any betrayal ever did. But with every sunrise, I felt a little stronger. I poured my energy into myself, into the dreams I had put on hold, into the friendships I had neglected, into the passions that once lit up my soul. Slowly, piece by piece, I built a new life, a life that wasn't defined by betrayal, but by freedom. And as time passed, I realized something incredible. His betrayal hadn't broken me. It had reshaped me. It had given me the strength to see through lies, to trust my instincts, to value myself in ways I never had before. Daniel lost more than just my love. He lost the chance to ever deceive me again. And that was the truest revenge of all. Looking back, I sometimes wonder if I could have done things differently. Could I have walked away quietly? Could I have spared him the public exposure? Maybe, but then maybe not. Because betrayal leaves scars that silence alone can't heal. Sometimes the truth needs to be spoken aloud. Sometimes the lesson isn't just for the betrayer, it's for everyone watching. If you've ever been betrayed, you know the kind of pain that sits heavy in your chest, the kind that steals your sleep and makes you question your worth.